Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
How's everyone doing this evening?
We're good.
Fine, thank you, Sharon.
Good. So it's 4:30. Let's call to order and do a roll call.
We do the pledge first?
I'm just following the agenda. It says roll
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Sharon Glasgow,
present.
George Andrews,
Here,
Rebecca Bear,
Present.
and Wayne Roner.
he'll be late.
Okay.
Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
There you go. I was just so excited to do it, I guess. I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag
of the United
of the
States
United States of America and to the republic
And to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God,
God, indivisible, with liberty
and
and justice for all.
for all. Adoption of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Recommendation. Motion to adopt the agenda for September 21st, 2020, with members of the committee reserving the right to add to the agenda and to take further action as the committee deems appropriate.
So moved, Rebecca.
Second,
Thank you. Approval of minutes. Recommendation, motion to approve the minutes for August 17th, 2020, pages 1 through 4.
so moved.
Second.
Included in the packet for your review is the PSBA Policy News Network newsletter volume 2020. This issue of the Policy News Network addresses policies related to the health and safety of students, staff, and the school community based on COVID-19 and the health and safety plans approved by the board for phased school reopening. Tonight, we have several policies for discussion. The first policy number 111, lesson plans. So I know that there was some correspondence regarding the lesson plans and whether or not teachers still had flexibility to add content, meaning videos, I guess things to supplement the lessons, like to continuously seek opportunities. But this, when I looked at the policy, it's not restrictive, and it does say that that's still an option. I know there were some questions, so I just wanted to find out if there was anything that needed to be clarified there.
This is more for the teachers when they have
It's more about the
substitutes coming in, is it not?
preparation of
Right.
lesson plans, more about preparation when I read through, so I wasn't sure.
Right, and it says it's an optional policy. So it's, I guess the question is, do we want to add this policy or do we already have this policy in place?
It's already here. It's already here.
You already
Okay.
have it.
Yes.
Okay,
This is just a change to the current policy, is it not?
right.
Correct.
And I guess it has to do with the online learning guidance and that PSBA did in April 2020, discuss implementing policy in a digital learning environment.
And all of the.
Are we looking at 111?
Yes, we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, it says policy 111. Minor revisions were made to policy 111 on lesson plans based on the need for many school entities to shift lesson plannings to digital platforms if they had not done so already. The online learning guidance document that PSBA issued on April 2020 discussed implementing policy 111 in a digital learning environment. Revisions were made to the policy to more specifically provide an option for lesson planning to be completed and submitted in an online platform.
Right.
I'm trying to see, where you seen that? Where you seen that, Rebecca?
In the book, it's one page after the pink page.
You're looking at 111, right?
Yes. 111.
George, that language is in the PNN newsletter that Rebecca is referring
And it
to.
was revised, and 111 was revised December 15th. Now we're just updating it. Am I correct?
They're advising us to.
Yes.
As a result of COVID-19, correct.
And I have to agree. Yeah, we need to. Okay. Yeah.
Right, because I know teachers are using, sometimes they have to use an online video or something
Right.
because they don't have a textbook.
Information. And when I looked at it, I saw there were a couple of things that kind of stood out, but it didn't change. Teachers are required to thoroughly prepare for lesson plans, and I'm looking at it looks like 2.3. The numbers are kind of off on here. Is it 1, 2? Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I saw that too.
3 and then 4. So such as duplicated material, so they changed it to printed or digital material.
Right.
And audio visual resources. I didn't see anything, but I know it was I think Debbie had raised a question. I was looking through my email, and some things came up regarding curriculum, but this is really about the preparation of lesson plans, and it now being approved by the assistant superintendent.
Correct. Rather than the school principal.
Right.
Correct. There are 2 other changes that I would recommend, at least for clarification, and that is in the second paragraph where it says a minimum of 3 days in advance. We would look to change that to 5 days in advance. Right now, we currently have teachers who are planning on Wednesday for the following week. So we just want that to reflect our practice, that the expectation is by the end of the week, you are planned and prepared for the subsequent week. So I would look to change that from a 3 to 5 days in advance. And then under number 2, the new number 2, the format for lesson plans shall be decided at the administrative level. I just want to make sure that that's clearly denoted that that's the district level. So the format is set by the district, and then all buildings follow that same format so that we don't have different formats at each of the buildings.
I agree with that.
That's true. That's so true.
So I just want to make sure that,
also.
so I just want to make sure that administrative, clearly it's understood that that's at the district level, unless we need to change that to district administrative level.
I would change it.
I think it'll be clearer that way.
Changing it
Mm-hmm.
so that it stands standard across the entire district, and not just the building having a different format. It's standardized. Less room for make it your own.
Mhm.
So the suggested changes under the authority and delegation of responsibility, recommendations are to change 3 to 5 days in advance, and under 2, instead of administrative, district level.
Correct.
Should we say district administrative level or?
Yes, I think so.
I think both of them would be
Yeah.
a
As
little
clear
more
as you can make it.
Yeah,
So there's no
district-
room for question.
District administrative level.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more questions regarding policy number 111? Lesson plans? Let's move on to policy number 203. And that is communicable diseases and immunizations. Where is that guidance and orders from? That's a lot. That's a mouthful in one sentence. I have to read it aloud. Bear with me. In order to safeguard the school community from the spread of certain communicable diseases, the board requires that guidance and orders from the state and local health officials establish board policy and administrative regulations and board approved health and safety plans. That's good. They put it all in, be followed by students, parents, guardians, and district staff. And this was an existing, I'm moving on to page 2 to see what the other update was. Or in accordance with programs from the PA Health Department.
Sharon, if I could assist here, all of this language is based on the new guidance due to COVID-19. So you'll see reference a lot to the health and safety plan, which obviously is new as a result of COVID-19. And this year for immunization, you'll see in the PNN guidance that they actually prolonged the length of time by 2 months that families can get immunizations in order for their children to attend school. So this supports that and obviously just guides us to continue to follow the guidance from the Department of Health with respect to communicable diseases and immunizations. And one of the things we're doing this year in October, I believe it's the 12th, we're actually bringing the Right Center to our district to provide those immunizations for the first time for our families right here in our district, as opposed to having to go to their family physician, or typically the Right Center is in Scranton area, so they'd have to drive there to comply with these regulations.
And
So-
that's
Is this immunization, is it an option for parents?
Certain ones, but there's certain ones that they, in order to enter Pennsylvania school district, you have to get certain ones.
Stuff, right, okay,
Like you don't have to get a flu shot, but you do have to get your measles, your mumps,
absolutely, right, stay on
your
track.
other ones and such.
Yeah, and what happens if they don't get them?
They can't go to school.
Well, that's not necessarily true. There is an approval that you can get from the PA Department of Health. And I, because I'm allergic to eggs and fish, and most vaccines are made with eggs and fish. So I always had to get a letter from the PA, from the Department of Health just to enter school.
Right. And I can't take live vaccines, so I get it.
Do they also have a letter for for religious purposes also? Sure.
Yes, George, there's an exemption for that. That's right on the Pennsylvania certification form that the family has the physician sign. If they're not obtaining the immunizations that the law requires for those reasons, there's a statement on that form that they can sign and submit in lieu of it. So our job's just to ensure that everyone has complied. And if they don't, the policy indicates that there is a period of time at which they're excluded from school until they comply by either being exempted or getting the immunizations. And if I could just go back in case anyone wrote down the date for the immunization clinic, it's on the Tuesday of Columbus Day weekend. That's October 13 at Middle Smithfield.
Thank you, Eric.
That's for all
I
kids.
did say the 12th, yes, it's the 13th.
And Sharon, that is for all children. They don't have to be district pupils. As long as they're school-age children, the Right Center will provide that service. We've distributed that information. We're distributing that information with all of our compliance letters that are going out through our school health departments. And we've also distributed it on our social media. And we're going to be working with local media outlets to also gain further publicity, because the Right Center is providing those vaccines to families. And although they will accept insurances, they do not bill anything that insurance does not cover.
Okay. But that hasn't been released yet, because I haven't seen anything as a parent.
It's been on Facebook, and as a parent, you would receive it if your child needed immunizations and was not compliant. The nurse tracks that, so you would receive the flyer along with your compliance letter.
So
And the general announcement's been on social media.
because it does say at the beginning of the school year, Okay, I mean, we're past the beginning of the school year, so it's out there now. And I'm assuming, but I will just double check. Thanks, understood. I have a question under Title 28, Section 23, dot 86. It says the board directs that students who have been diagnosed by a physician or are suspended of having a disease by the school nurse shall be excluded from the school for the period indicated by the regulation of the PA department. Does the board direct that?
I think,
what way?
I think.
I don't
what-
know. That's what it says. That's what we're asking. So what is our direction?
Like, 'cause
Is it just in accordance to the safety plan that we approved?
Yes. So this is part of the health and safety plan. So if a student is asymptomatic or a student is positive, for example, of COVID-19 or around someone as per the health and safety plan, which is approved by the board, you're actually saying that that student would be removed from school, not suspended, but excluded from physically being in school for a period of time, which of course is based on the CDC guidance of either 10 days if they present symptoms or 14 days, which would be directed by the Department of Health through contact tracing if they were around someone that was positive or they themselves tested positive. So
Can we-
it is,
I would, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just thinking, I think it's just, because normally, outside of COVID, do we have a safety plan? If we weren't in the middle of COVID-19, would we have a safety plan?
Such as this.
You would have this policy.
This policy. I'm thinking that the wording could say the board approved safety plan.
We'll direct the student to have,
Directs, the board approved safety plan direct students who have,
right? I'd like to add that in there too, because otherwise it sounds like we're just
yeah.
out. I think it should be based upon the board approved health and safety plan, which directs that students have been diagnosed by a physician.
Just
Is
know
that
that this
basically what we
policy,
say in page 3, on page 3, third paragraph up from the bottom?
That same wording would be ideal.
Yeah. Up in the first paragraph. I agree with you, Sharon.
Yeah, that would be good to just take that.
if I could
That
just
would
add, just note that this policy is one that's always here. It's been in effect well before COVID and will be after. So it's not narrowly construed to the direction given in a health and safety plan, because the health and safety plan that we're operating under right now is in effect as authorized by the board until the pandemic, this particular pandemic ends. It could be resurrected for another one at some point in the future. But even without that plan, should we go back to a new normal, there will still be the requirement for the board or the administration and the school physician to act on the policy and exclude students from time to time from school for other diseases that may present, whether it's a potential case of tuberculosis, other longstanding communicable diseases that are specifically listed there in the Pennsylvania Code.
My recommendation is to just pull that wording from the bottom, as George suggested, board approved health and safety plan, directly under communicable diseases. And hopefully one day we'll be outside of COVID and we can just update the policy.
Or maybe we'll always have a health and safety plan going forward. 'Cause
Hey, you never know. Maybe forever. The district may disclose information from health records to appropriate parties in connection with an emergency. So I have a question for the, I'm on page 4, SC 1409, where it says the district may disclose information from health records to appropriate parties. Does that negate HIPAA to disclose that information? What do you mean appropriate parties?
Yeah, that's vague.
We're still
Okay.
subject to non-disclosure under HIPAA. This is authorizing the district to do so when it's required. For example, during the pandemic, there's
Mhm.
a requirement to release certain records. It can be name, date of birth, symptoms to the Department of Health. So in order to do that, we have to have that authorization. That's why that's there.
So that would be like if you had it and you were exposed to me, but I didn't know you had it and you were exposed to me, that gives you permission to release my information to the Department of Health so they can then contact me.
Right. Anything in accordance with HIPAA, right? It's not releasing it as if it were directory information by any means. And
Thank
Sharon,
you.
would it meet the objective, just a suggestion, I see your point in moving that language or copying it up to the top of the policy. If we include the phrase or just the word "and any" ahead of the health and safety plan, it can stay there forever then, which would mean that we would simply have the authorization to, in this case, exclude students in accordance with, board policy and any health and safety plan. So if there isn't one, there
Right.
is, but if there is, there is. That way we don't have to worry about necessarily coming back and changing the policy every time there's one in place.
I think that's a great idea. I agree.
I have no problem with that.
And I think with that one, the district may disclose information. Can we put something in there why we're disclosing it? Just so it doesn't sound like we're giving away information.
Basically, maybe we have to say, as required by,
But really, that's the law.
as required by health department law or something like that.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we're not doing it. We're not doing it this at the realm.
Right. I just worry that,
In accordance with applicable law.
yes. I guess you have that there, yeah, with applicable law and board policy. I guess.
I would say we can only do this, and we are only doing this, as Rebecca, your example is spot on. When we would need to do contact tracing, the Department of Health would require that information from based on any student that may have been within close distance with that individual that either has symptoms or has tested positive for symptoms of COVID-19.
So can we put for the purpose of contact tracing?
I think you
I think
can.
it would fit us if we did that, because it doesn't, keep in mind, it's not just COVID, but it's communicable.
That's
Right.
correct.
Could be other opportunities, but I think this is safe. I think it says, if
Okay.
we recognize and there's a diagnosis, then we'll release some information that could be relative, to it possibly affecting someone else. And at least the general information of the party, of the person.
And note too, at times it's necessary for us, in order to obtain accurate advice and direction, to disclose all of that health information, of course, to our school physician in consultation, which is all part of applicable law. So that's why it's nicely covered in there. And I'm sure we probably can't imagine all the ways in which we might have to share health information, but we'll always do it in accordance with the law.
Any more questions regarding or comments regarding policy 203, immunizations and communicable diseases? Moving on to policy number 209, health examination screenings under solicitor review.
I just want to mention on policy 209 that pages 3 and 4 are just backwards in the book, unfortunately. So if you could just take note of that. They're just, okay. They're just inverted right now.
The religious pieces in there under SC 419, Title 28, 23.45.
Are they under solicitor's review for the wording on 209?
I missed your question, George.
I said, are they under the solicitor's review because of the wording?
Yes, specifically regarding health monitoring.
It looks like we changed medical to health monitoring. What's the difference between medical monitoring and health monitoring?
I imagine it's a COVID thing at this point. The overall health instead of.
Well, because if you monitor a child for a concussion, you're monitoring the health of the child, not necessarily the medical.
Is it because of mental health?
Could be mental health. It could be, COVID health. It could be concussion. It could be anything.
And because of that wording, this is the exact reason we're just letting you know we have it on deck, but we have it in our solicitor's hands for review because we could not find a valid reason for some of the recommendations that has come through the PSBA's policy network. So we want to make sure that we're not doing something that goes well beyond the scope of what we're required, and the board in essence be directing staff that don't have the qualifications to monitor something that they shouldn't be. So we're just sort of stopping and having it read through once by council before we have to take any action on it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, just that we just wanted you to see it as we're working on it, so you know it's out there, because we have the same questions that are being asked here, but we just paused and set it aside right now.
So there's really nothing we have to do with this right now until we get it.
Just be aware of it. Yeah, just be aware of it. And if
Anything that didn't look crisp, though, like, that. Any other questions? So we know that's going to be reviewed. And if there are recommendations, we will hear those later. Let's move on to policy number 705, facilities and workplace safety. I love that line. I think that's a good one. And it's pretty,
It looks like we're just clarifying some language on it
Correct.
and making it pretty clear to everybody what the responsibilities are.
And in a number of these policies, 705, 904, 907, you're going to just again see reference to any existing health and safety plan, and giving clear authorization to the staff and the administration to act upon that and then not allow visitors to enter our facilities or workplaces or public events if they're not in compliance with those plans.
Okay.
I'm good with this one.
Me too.
Any other questions regarding policy 705?
Nope.
I'm moving on to 803, school calendar. Is Wayne here?
Wayne will be here in a minute. He just called me and said he's on his way. He had a
Let's hurry up. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure he'll have a comment about this one.
I know.
So we may want to hold off on this. He'll be here in a couple minutes.
You want to cover him? We want to move forward to the next and come back?
We may want to come back to this one.
I'm fine with that. Let's move forward. 904. That was cute.
This is a good one too.
Public attendance at school events. Okay.
Okay, now does this one address the school attendance or spectator attendance at the
I think this is more about behavior.
pardon?
This one looks to me more about behavior and the use of nicotine and tobacco and recording devices and all that. If I'm, or no, it has to do with tobacco and vaping more so than anything else, if I look at it correctly.
Well, on page 2 of 5, under authority, I think that's where George is speaking of.
Okay,
And the attendance piece is not addressed per policy, but as per the district's board approved health and safety plan. So the health and safety plan is where you would find attendance requirements or limitations, not
Correct.
in policy.
right.
So Billy, that's where we're going to discuss the health and safety plan,
Yes, sir.
where we discuss for football versus other sports.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Right, and this one more goes into the behavior of the obscene language, fighting, e-cigarettes, chewing tobacco, etc.
Almost like participation expectations, what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
Reporting. Office for Safe School Report. What's that?
What is that?
On page 3 of 5, it says under reporting, Office for Safe Schools Report.
What is that?
What is that? An office? Is that a?
That is a report that comes through my office. Actually, Debbie does that report at the end of every school year and submits it to the Pennsylvania Office of Safe Schools.
Okay, never saw that, but it's a template pretty much.
Yes.
Okay. On section 805.1 on page 4, the very the red section, the very last line, are those numbers accurate? 1, 2, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. What's that about?
Okay, Sharon, those there refer to the references which should be at the end. This PSBA is going about it a different way. Rather than putting it on the side to the left, they're starting to put it at the end of the document.
Can I send them?
So I can actually pull that out because I had copied and pasted from PSBA. So I can pull those numbers out because we still have it in this policy on the left side rather than at the end of the document.
Is that the
That's
expected?
my question, is should it be there then? And is it reflective? Because when I go to the bottom of this document, I don't see 1, 2.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'll probably remove it at this point because we have the notations and the references on the left-hand column rather than at the end. So I just need to take that off of there, just those numbers.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure I was.
Yep, thanks for catching that.
I'm getting old. And I'm assuming Jules is a type of tobacco, something they can't keep up.
Hey, Sharon, Jules is like a thing you used to vape.
Okay. Are they, so we're no longer calling security officers school resource officers?
The school resource officer is when we used to have the state police that would come in. So we only currently have school security and our own district school police officers. So an SRO would be just if you had a contract with the state police, which we do not at this point.
Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions regarding policy 904?
So this doesn't say the consequences of the behaviors. It just says they're not allowed. Would that be addressed somewhere else?
I think that would then go into conduct, because this is really just talking about expected behaviors.
This is expected behavior though for not
Okay.
students. This has nothing, this is for just the public itself.
Yeah.
Right. So there's no circumstances, like I said, so that would be separate. Then the conduct is separate than the behavior. So there's no consequences here. It's just saying, don't do it. Is my question.
Actually, Rebecca, I think you made a very good point just now, because
That's where we are with the other one.
what the consequences are, ejection or whatever, from school property, in this policy. I think that was a good question. I didn't even think of that.
Right, because all I'm reading is what don't do, but it doesn't say what happens if you
Doesn't say
do.
the consequences. I think we need to address that,
Right, so that way we can adhere to it, so we don't do it for one parent and not another. So if, Mrs. Jones curses out the ref, and, Mrs. Smith curses out the ref, but Mrs. Jones is banned from all games now, but Mrs. Smith is not, we need to be uniform.
Yeah, and right now it's arbitrary. I think you're right. We need, okay, if you do this behavior, this is what the consequences. I agree with on that.
Right, here's a written warning,
I do have a question though. Is that a policy or is that the
an
internal
AR.
AR?
Either way, we need to get it done.
I just think it's important because we need consistency across the board with this type of stuff. That's just me.
No, I understand.
It's
Yeah,
just-
much appreciated. Administration, your perspective on this? The consequences of not,
I'll speak to, obviously, your code of student conduct, if this were in relationship to a student, the code of student conduct carries itself into all school-sponsored events.
Correct.
So if we're speaking of a student specifically, that is answered already through the code of student conduct, which applies to any school-sponsored event.
But if it's a parent,
Yeah,
Billy, I have a question. Does the code of conduct, and this is just my perception, it recognizes that there was some inappropriate behavior, but does it list the consequences for that behavior? Like what should be done at different?
for the students it does, but not for the parents.
correct.
Okay.
And I think just my opinion, from going to a lot of sporting events, I think we need something just so we're uniform, because if I, get ejected from a game for cursing, then I need to know that I'm not welcome back anymore because I did it. So if we tell parents in advance, these are the behaviors and these are the consequences if you choose to make that choice, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, and if you get the first time it's one game, it's the second time you're out for the season or something like that. Yeah, I agree with Rebecca on that.
It's got to be uniform, so it, we're not doing like for Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Smith, two different things. And it has to go the same for an away team too. So if an away team does it, they need to know, what, you're no longer welcome to come to our school when your child plays here.
Yep.
So my question still lies, where should that be documented? Under the code of conduct?
No, because we're talking about adults.
Right.
So you either can write specific language into the policy, or we can work on an AR that would describe the progressive steps that you want the district administration to take when a spectator at an event is not following policy.
I think we should develop something like that. Work on that. I think it's important.
Billy, is an AR more flexible?
Yeah, it is, because it doesn't require you to do a policy change, and you could make those adjustments at any time. So yes.
That's what I thought. So I would think we'd want to do it under an AR versus a policy change.
One of the
As long as
benefits,
we address it.
one of the benefits of doing it in an AR as well is you can probably agree that spectators and those attending our events will continually invent new things to do in violation of the policy. And it simply, if nothing more, allows us to keep a track by making it part of the AR of what we did the first time that offense came up, so that if it comes up again, we can be consistent. And I really hear that's the key here is
Yes.
consistency. And
Mhm.
it can be very challenging to think of all of the things. And it may also be unfair to sometimes lump them all into one form of consequence. So if we can do it as we go, under the current administration, we know where we've been. We can already catch an AR up to that and document some of it, and then continue to keep that as a live document moving forward for consistency.
I agree with
I
that.
think that would be great. I also think that we can start with the like in kind conduct and look at what happens at a, for a student, and then, a parent of or an adult. At least it gives us a springboard to start of, because whatever's in the conduct, we know those are things that have happened before. So
Mhm.
it's probably, like in kind between both the kids and the adults.
Mhm.
Now,
You can just grow it.
Billy, you said that, of course, in the student guide of code of conduct is all taken care of. But if it's a spectator, that the students wouldn't know.
Sorry, I just had my leg bit off.
The students wouldn't know what our code of conduct is. So
Yes.
somehow we got to get that out to the world.
Students do know what our code of conduct is.
We get that comes home with us the first week of school. So
That's
the
correct.
people know that.
I
I
think
signed
George is
mine.
referring to visiting students, perhaps.
Yeah.
Meeting start? Oh, yeah.
I don't think we're visiting much right now.
The players are.
Here's Wayne.
It's true.
I would just kindly ask if anyone has any suggestions, just send them to me and we will start to work that into a document that we can share at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna move on. Are there any other questions regarding,
Wayne is here, so we're gonna go back to 803.
I just.
Now we go back to
on this one. Bear with me for 1 second.
803.
If we could just check the numbers again at the back end of 907, page 3. It's the first paragraph there. We have some numbers there. I don't know if they should be there because I don't see 1 and 4 following that. And moving on.
Ron, that one actually in the references does have the citations of 1 through 4. You'll see the school code sections, which is where that's referencing. So 1 is 24 PS 510.
I see where you're saying now.
Okay.
I do thank you for that.
Yes.
clarification.
Yep.
And we're moving on to, let's do school visitors and then we'll go back to the school calendar. Is that okay?
That sounds good to me.
We can just give them a chance to get acclimated. Computer's freezing.
907 right now. Keep going. The last one, then we'll go back to 803. The question is, on this one with me is, it says the superintendent or designee or building principal, whatever, has the authority to prohibit the entry of any individual. Does that include school board members?
Yes.
So why would we want to, would the superintendent or a designee or the principal want to prohibit a school board member coming into school?
There could be any number of reasons.
Like what?
Interfering with the day-to-day operations of the school system.
What No, I agree that the, let's say, school board member should contact the principal and not just show up. I mean, that's just common courtesy, let alone having a policy. I mean, but to say that they can could basically deny it, I would think they would have to have a reason or something. Billy. It's just a question.
And, you know, I think we kind of talked about this previously, when there were a couple of visits by school board members, and we talked about this. I'm trying to be careful, but we did talk about this, and it's something I think that we as a school board, if we recognize that one of us is a little inappropriate, I think those are discussions that we should have. And I think we would be able to have conversations with administration at any given time. Things could happen. There could be mental illness. I mean, we just never know. So I think it's safe the way it's written here. The superintendent or designee and building principal have the authority to prohibit the entry of whoever. I think it's, and I think that's what it should be. Because really it's in the best interest of our students and our employees. We want everybody to feel safe. And sometimes those interruptions are just that, interruptions to the day-to-day operations.
Well, then
To possibly wait until, you know, another time, a more convenient time. And it's kind of mutual respect too.
More convenient time and all, but they must, I feel they have to give then let's say the principal would have to give principal or school or the superintendent or basically, actually, this is for principals, would have to give a reason why you can't come in. They just can't say you can't come in.
No one has the right to be in a school other than the teachers, the students, and the people who are involved in the day-to-day operations of that school. And that's the reason. There doesn't really need to be a reason other than that the day-to-day operations of the school, as Sharon has stated, is the only reason, and no one has the right or the need to be in there.
So when I wanted to look at the North High School gymnasium that they've done a beautiful job on, Ben could have said to me, "You can't come in."
That's correct, but he didn't.
No, I'm not. No, babe.
So is that the direction we want to go in? We'll think about that.
Find the way it's
Well, there's no reason for us to just show up. We can always call in advance and say, you know what, I'd like to come to the new gym floor.
No,
Or
that was the statement being made.
I didn't say that. I called Ben and asked him.
exactly, you followed what the rule said, what the policy states. He means show up unannounced, go to the front door and say, I demand to come in right now.
But if Ben said no, if Ben said I don't want you in
Today, and then you say to him, is there a mutually convenient time that I can come in?
and if he said yeah, I agree with you. I'm just trying to get something clarified. Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to get into a
No. I agree with what you're saying, George. And so does Sharon. It's just what this policy states is you can't go to the front door, ring the doorbell and say, I need to come in now. Just like a parent can't ring the doorbell and demand to come in now.
Oh, I wouldn't think you should be able to just demand to come in right now.
But that's what this policy is stating.
Most principals are very accommodating, and I think they're very good at that, and I'm pleased with what they do. I'm just trying to clarify what the thing is on school visitors. That's all.
Well, that's what this policy is stating.
Pardon?
I was just saying, what I like is it states who has the authority to say no. And we have to accept, I like that that's written. Because if it's not a convenient time and it's, it could be perceived. I think we're going a little in the weeds.
Yeah.
I think the policy states what it should say.
Okay.
Well, so if I am taking photographs of the condition of our ball fields Are you suggesting you're telling me that's a violation?
No, but I would call if you're coming someplace and taking photographs, because that's not a normal action or behavior of anyone who would come to a school district. So if that was your intent, I would definitely pick up the phone and make some arrangements. Hey, this is, I plan on coming. This is my.
I was at the North High School, for example. I was at the North High School last week. And once again, I've got a varsity baseball field that has an infield littered with weeds, and we have potholes. I'm going to continue to photograph those issues so that I can promote routine maintenance. I do intend to continue to do that to improve the quality of the school district.
I understand what you're saying, Wayne, but most softball fields and baseball fields tend to go to the wayside in the fall.
Yeah,
And then,
not really. I usually go to most away games. I know the condition of most school district properties.
So you guys think of it this way. We're in COVID. What's the most important thing that we have to worry about? Who's on the baseball field right now?
Ball players.
Not baseball players, not for the district.
They're not doing fall ball.
Little League is, but not to school.
Well, we did fall ball last year. If we're not doing fall ball this year, it's because of COVID, but certainly, that's an example. We still want our potholes to be filled in. We want to maintain what we have.
But we also want to prioritize what's most important right now.
Understood, but we also want to make sure that there's a level of maintenance. The point that George and I are trying to make here is we just don't want the policies to be abused, because we do certainly pick and choose how we enforce and administer policies moving forward. I'm completely aware of that.
I believe that's a false statement.
I know that's not a false statement, but that's okay.
That's okay. But we also want to protect our schools.
Certainly, we want to protect our schools.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding policy 80? Well, I had already moved on to, 907 school visitors.
I'm fine on that.
Any other questions or comments? Let's move on to policy number 803, school calendar.
Yeah, we were waiting for you on this one, William.
Why?
Not because it has to do with Operation School Calendar. It's one we all have to get involved with.
This is important, especially given COVID, this new, that long paragraph there. We just don't know if the number of days, we just don't know, so it's good.
Basically, it's say we can, the way I read it, is that we can be flexible. And if we have to make changes, we can make the changes. Isn't that what it really says, Sharon?
Yeah,
I'm reading that it gives us some flexibility.
yeah, George, and you are correct. And what I would just add to that is it's somewhat a moot point, because the board has always had flexibility in approving a calendar.
Well, I'm hoping it doesn't last 4 years.
And this
COVID.
year is no exception, where I think tonight you have on the board agenda perhaps the third or fourth calendar revision, fourth. I see Eric holding up 4 fingers. So this doesn't change that flexibility that you as a board always have maintained in approval of the district calendar.
And we also this year, didn't we, we approved it last year, but we're probably going to use it this year as the 5 days for the, what's it called, the flex days?
Flexible instructional days, that's correct.
So we're probably going to be using those this year, right, Billy?
Yeah, that's correct, George.
Any other questions regarding school calendar? Because I know the next three were definitely ones we wanted to spend a little time on, and we don't have much time. I'm going to move on to policies requested by the committee. So we requested 317, 417, and 517. That was employees, conduct for employees, and conduct for administrators, I think, professional employees and support employees.
And actually, they're all basically the same
They are.
policy. One's for employee, and I see we repealed the 517 and 417, but they have to do with the conversation we had
Mhm.
a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, referencing grievances and the arbitrary dealing out of punishment.
You know how we just talked about creating the AR for the conduct for adults at on I was gonna say on campus, on school grounds or at events. Would this be similar to that? I know you sent the
Absolutely. We need, it's, my thing was that dealing with whether it's employees, professional employees, support employees, bus drivers, teachers, administrators, we've been dealing out,
right.
one person would get 3 days
Just be
unpaid.
consistent for the same violation.
They
Right?
get a
That's
reference.
my biggest thing is consistency, and we lack that when it comes to consequences for actions, whether it be at a sporting event or for grievances or, misconduct by anybody.
You're exactly where I'm at. It's consistency. And we can't have a bus driver get that non-pay suspension and a teacher get
Paid suspension.
paid suspension, or so it's just the same offense. So it really comes down to doing a policy that's
Or an AR or whatever, yeah.
well, it looks like they're saying we're repealing 417 and 517, and we're making it all under one policy, which is good.
Right,
But right now they're not repealed,
correct.
and we also have to do, as you said, Rebecca, we have to do a set of rules that's consistent with everybody, whether it's progressive or however. It's going to be a big project. Let's put it that way.
Right, but it needs to be done.
If I can add in, and to that point, we had that special executive session where I was fortunate, for all of us to have that dialogue. And I've already initiated working on a template or a chart to start to reflect and capture the expected behaviors of our employees and looking at potential consequences for such. In speaking to our grievances, specifically to what we have been involved with in the past, there absolutely was inconsistencies. I think in my tenure and working with our current administrative team that we have in place, that's exactly what we have been working towards doing, is bringing that continuity and consistency to it, albeit meeting some resistance with the associations. That is actually what we have been working towards. So we'll continue to have that dialogue. And certainly, like I said, I've already prepared, some items as far as a chart and getting some of this together for some talking points moving forward.
Now I'm going to make another comment, because it was said that, well, we didn't have to work with the unions on this, but they have union contracts and all. We do have to work with the unions on these grievances and how we do the disciplinary actions, because they do have also their union contracts, and then how you guys have to deal with them on the union contract. So why would we do arbitrary on our part, or do it all in the dark without talking to the unions?
As far as consequences that are issued, That is not something that we collaborate with the association on.
Why not?
Do we go through the grievance process and work on resolutions and
Why do we want to go through the grievance? If we don't have to go through the grievance process, why do we do it? Why don't we work with them, come up with a set of plans and all, and that everybody agrees to? I don't want grievances. I'll tell you right now. I don't know about the rest of the board, but
Yeah,
I don't want grievances.
George, I don't disagree. At the same time, if we're trying to hold employees to a standard, and if I don't have everybody on board with what those standards should look like among their colleagues or their association membership, they may very well not be in alignment with what our approach is.
Steve,
yes,
you made my point. You talked with the union to come up with something so you can all get on the same page. You just made my point. Thank you.
Well, don't we have standards right now with policy and administrative regulations?
No.
We don't?
Sort of policy,
But
there's no AR for if you do A, B happens. If you do C, D happens. We don't have anything set in place. So unfortunately, when it happens, you may get a different punishment than me 6 months from now because there's no AR in place to say, if you say this in front of a student, this is what happens. Or if you speak this way to your immediate supervisor, this is what happens. Or if you don't show up for a bus route because you get mad, this is what happens. So there's nothing in place as of yet. And what we're trying to do, and I understand what Sharon is saying, is we want to get an AR in place to work on it, to put something into place and maybe work with the union and say, what do you think is reasonable for this? What do you think is reasonable for that? And then come to the board and say, okay, well, maybe that's not reasonable for this, but this is for that. So I think that's where we need to come together, George, is put something in place and have us come up with an AR and then say to the union, based on a review of all grievances and all disciplinary actions, we think this is the right way to go.
We need their input. We need the
right, but we should design it first and say,
right,
based on past experiences, this is what we've done. These are the 3 things that we've done. Yes, we haven't been consistent and we apologize.
I'll tell you right now.
Past. Let's go forward. And what do you think about this?
The administration and the union people are going to have a lot more than what the past experiences and what us board members are, because a lot of us are all fairly new, 3 years or less.
Right. And following our meeting that we had earlier in September, that's absolutely where we're headed. At this point, when we left that meeting, I'm just working on formulating a chart that starts to outline some of this information. We absolutely will be able to, reference and talk with and demonstrate to them. Those things haven't occurred previously because prior to really even my tenure coming on board, it was haphazard as to whether something was done or not done. Now, the past 3 years, we have been implementing things consistent based on what violations we've identified. The part that a grievance evolves out of is association or membership not being in agreement with what that consequence may have been. So that's the plan. That's where we're preparing things now. And we'll be looking to have those discussions and work on this collectively moving forward.
Every time we go to arbitration, it costs us a lot of money.
Absolutely. I don't disagree.
And Mr. Andrews, what I'll add to that is, and reiterate what Mr. Zoll just said, I would say over the past 2 to 3 years, absolutely, that consistency has been built. What we lack is the agreement in holding people to high expectations and holding them accountable when certain things occur. That's where kind of the breakdown has been. And I agree, there needs to be more communication and understanding and having the same expectation from the associations to the administration as to what is acceptable behavior among our employees when we're serving our students.
And the only way that can occur is if we talk to each other.
Absolutely. And
so the administration has to talk to the union people to make that happen.
Absolutely. And the association has to be open to that communication.
I agree. I agree with that.
Good
And we have
writing.
two
So-
different unions.
You're implying that we don't have a policy in place for, I find it hard to believe that we don't have a policy in place for employment for this school district. I find it hard to believe that there aren't administrative regulations in place for employee conduct, because we have student conduct, code of conduct. I find it hard to believe we do not have that.
We kind of
We-
talked
we do-
about mirroring that and having a starting point. And out of respect for time, because we could definitely bring these back. And if I heard correctly, I think I heard Zal said he's started coming up with a framework. So, you know, maybe by the next time we meet, we'll have additional information and we'll have more to plug in.
kind of language
Just out of
we
respect for
are,
time. I know
Guys, it's 5:30, just so you know.
Just out of respect for time, I want us to move on.
And we also have to be aware of, you know, even when cases go to arbitrators, you know, they can be inconsistent on how they delve out their determinations for things. So part of it is just to what we're looking to do. We need to get some framework and work collaboratively on what this will look like representative of East Stroudsburg Area School District.
I am going to move on and we can bring these back to next month's agenda, probably with more information in hand. We're moving on to the public participation section of the meeting. Anyone for discussion?
what's that?
Rose,
Yes.
I will support the planning portion, but I came in late, so I didn't hear what you may have said.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you just said? I couldn't hear you.
I said I came in late to the meeting, so I did not hear what you did with the planning portion. Are we going to discuss that further?
Is this the lesson plans?
Yes.
We did discuss the lesson plans and there were two suggested edits. We were moving from 3 to 5 days and we were changing some verbiage to read district administration in the document. But other than that, we were good with everything else. Is there something particular that you wanted to bring out about the lesson plans policy?
Uh,
Why are we going to 5 days ahead of time for lesson plans?
I don't care about how far it's done, but I care about the fact that it seems to me this becomes too much of a big brother micromanagement. If this is just the baseline and principals still have an opportunity to say, if you do this, you're reaching a higher level, then I would agree. But I think that it should just say,
So the problem is that if you got 5 days lesson plans and the teachers get bogged down on one thing and they don't get it done, now they've got to make changes and all. So it's bad enough trying to get teachers to do 3 days of lesson plans, let alone 5 days.
it has nothing to do with timing. It has to
Right,
do
I don't think that's the issue. When we looked at this policy, we see this policy as the preparation, the preparations requirements for teachers. And I'm trying to understand, and I can really barely hear you, but what exactly is the opportunity?
I have an issue with the principal not being the person who assures that the lesson plan is right, and that if there's a higher standard to be met, that administration is only producing a minimum. This is your minimum requirement to prepare for a lesson plan.
I prepared
lesson
what you're saying now. So we did move from the principals, the building, because we talked about having it be standardized across administration. Sorry.
That's what I oppose. If it's a minimum standard, and if you're just the level C teacher and you just want to do the minimum, you do what administration put out. But if there's an opportunity to go beyond that and do better and become a superior teacher, then that's the part I'm talking about.
But it doesn't right now, based on what I've read, I didn't see that it delineated that, you know, don't go above and beyond. I didn't see that that way in terms of preparation.
Yeah, teachers have the flexibility to obviously go above and beyond whatever the requirements are that are set by the district. What we don't want to happen, which is occurring right now, and that is 10 buildings having 10 different sets of expectations for what needs to be included in a lesson plan. So we have staff at one building who are expected to do X, and staff at another building who are expected to do X, Y, and Z. So to bring equity across the district, it's to say, at a minimum, this is what we're going to expect all of our teachers, the lesson plan format, to include. Teachers, by all means, can go above and beyond and supplement where necessary, but we need to have a consistent message across the district.
I agree with that. A minimum can come out, but I really also believe that a principal should be held responsible to make sure that their teachers are doing the correct work. If you're going to give something out that's a minimum and say it can go above that, it should go to the principals and have them enforce it.
The issue with that is we will have 10 different sets of expectations again.
No, I think that you need to sit with all your principals and say, let's come up with what the minimum standard is. If you have something that's above that, or you want your teachers to do something else that's above that, it doesn't hurt them if they do it. It doesn't hurt them if they don't do it. If they do it, maybe it gives them an extra couple of points on an evaluation. That's how you get better teachers.
We will absolutely get input from the principals in regards to setting the expectation for lesson planning. Teachers can go above and beyond at all times to be more distinguished in their ratings.
I think you need to put some onus on those principals, because if you're getting 10 different levels and some of them are great and some of them are stinky, then you have to address those principals. And the ones who are going up and above and beyond should maybe be helping with the template for those people who are not. I know it's because we have some new principals and they don't get the drift yet, but that could be the key.
But isn't there a rating system and an evaluation for each teacher based on their individual performance? I think it would be good to have a standardized administrative process that we all know this is the standard. But there's still room for individuality, creativity, innovation, you know, using different methods to definitely use whatever you need to get the lesson across, you know, stay current. But I think that's more so what evaluation is about, or you know, I think there's still principals popping in for you know, to view a class, and you know, I'm not sure I'm there.
So it's almost a big brother thing. And maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly, and that's why I asked.
I think this policy is really talking about the preparation of lesson plans, what the expectations are universally for the district. It doesn't alienate, delineate. It really is pretty generic. The only thing that's really changing is the administrative level coming up with one expectation throughout the district. And I think that's a good thing.
I don't like the administration approving lesson plans. I believe that's a responsibility of the principal. I believe they can set the minimum standard, but I think I can agree. And I did lesson plans, so believe me, I get it.
So in order to just and greatly appreciate the comments, we have to move forward because we are well extended into our time and we can't discuss it further. Are there any other public participation?
I guess we didn't do. So we're not going to do 105 this week? We're going to do that next month?
It's not on the agenda.
Well, I asked you about it
It
earlier.
was 3 days ago. I didn't get it to them in time.
Well, it doesn't have to be on the agenda because we can add anything we want to the agenda, but I guess we're not going to talk about it.
What one?
Well, right now it's 5:45, so we're,
I guess that's it. We're short. Okay, no problem. But it was with Rebecca's request about the teacher who was talking about something put
Put it on
on.
next month, George. It'll be good.
Okay. If you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with
I'm
it.
comfortable getting it on next month.
Okay, sounds good.
thank you. Motion to authorize and direct the administration to post the following items with noted revisions for public review. So that would be policy 203, immunization and communicable diseases, policy 209, health examination screening. Well, no, we're not going to post that because the solicitor is going to give us, review that for us. Policy 705, facilities and workplace safety, policy 803, school calendar, policy 904, public attendance at school events, and policy 907, school vendors.
Do we not on 904, do we not have to do an AR on that one?
We're not changing the policy. We agreed to do an AR, correct?
So do we move that forward or do we leave that where it is until we get the AR?
I don't think that stops us from moving the policy forward. It's still the instruction. The policy is still good. We just know that we want to create an AR as a supplemental document.
Do we make that change to the policy that we need an AR?
You don't need to do that. And Sharon is correct. You can move the policy forward without it.
Okay.
I have one question. Are these policies consistent for both the North and South School? Will they be enforced consistently?
I'm not there.
I would hope so.
I think the policy is the policy.
Kelly, Riker, will we enforce these consistently between the North and South School?
That's the expectation, yes.
Okay. So since there's been a lifetime, I just want to make sure this is clear. There's been a lifetime of our fans being able to stand at the Purple Pit fence. I would like to, then I do expect the fans up at the North to be able to stand at the fence without being harassed.
That's not policy. That's procedure.
Okay.
And that will be enforced consistently.
Okay, what will be enforced?
Whatever the,
Policy will be enforced.
Whatever the AR states it should be.
no, whatever the procedure is for public spectators at our games.
Okay, so since we have every year stood at the fence, is that permissible this year?
Are we talking about a policy right now? Or are we talking about scenarios?
Well, it's policy.
It's definitely not policy.
So what I'd like to do, can we get a motion to adjourn? Rich is texting. They're waiting for us on the other side.
Well, what's the interpretation?
I think we can discuss that later.
Yeah.
Later. We don't have time right now to discuss that, so.
Are we going to be consistent? That's all I'm asking.
And he's saying yes.
He said yes.
Okay, I just didn't hear him say yes.
Can someone make a motion to adjourn?
Rebecca makes a motion to adjourn, please.
There a
We
second?
first need a motion to move the other policies forward.
I make a motion to move the policies forward.
I
Thank
second.
you, Rebecca. Thank you, George.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
I second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in 1 minute over on the other side.